Hey everybody, welcome back. Mike from Spectre Comics here. Today is February 13th, 2021. The reason I'm saying that day out loud and marking it is because it's a very important day for me because I have finally finished Spectre Comics issue 6. Here in my hand, I hold all of the pages printed, completed, and ready to be edited. And when I say complete, I mean the heavy lifting's done, the drawing is completed, the writing is done. I've printed out all my sheets. And now the process of editing begins where we do proofreading and I just check the art and make sure there's nothing, wrong with any of the art in there. I'm happy with everything and it's exactly where I want it. And all that stuff has to be done and cleaned up before we go to print. But, the book is done and it's felt like many years that I've been working on this. And the reason it's felt like many years is because it actually has been many years. I've been working on this since 2016. So marking this day of February 13th, 2021 is very important because we have finally finished the book. I have finally finished the book. And I'm just glad to be able to say that because I've been working on this nonstop for quite a long time. Now, before we talk about drawing the last 2 pages, which this video is about, drawing the last 2 pages, I just want to say as always, I'm working on a Wacom Cintiq 13 HD tablet. I'm using Photoshop Elements 2019 as my drawing program, and we're going to talk about the last 2 pages. What you're seeing behind me is the second to last page. I'm not going to show the final page. I was originally going to show both pages and just do a speed draw behind me where I was just showing both pages, but then I kind of decided to leave the very last page as a little bit of a mystery, and you can check it out when complete, when the book is printed, if you're interested. But aside from that, we're going to talk about the second to last page, and I want to talk about specifically how the last 2 pages transition into the next issue, which is issue 7, which we're going to start working on in the near future once we get this book off to print. So I mentioned in my last video on drawing comics that I format my comic books a specific way with the story. And I'll just run through that really quickly here. I normally start each issue or chapter connecting to whatever happened in the last issue, wherever we left off. We kind of continue that. We set up the story that's going to take place in the chapter. That's the next step. The next thing I do is there's some sort of event, some sort of action or event, something to cause some drama in the issue, something of interest, some sort of action sequence or some sort of dramatic event that happens in the issue. The next thing we do is I will resolve that issue, whatever it was. And then the final thing I'll do in the issue is to leave the reader with some sort of cliffhanger or revelation that gives them a lot of interest to want to read on to the next chapter. So following that format has been very successful for me. And I found, I'm not a writer by trade or anything like that, but I've kind of found as I've been writing, this is one way to keep the story interesting, and at least for me. As I write this way and as I follow this format, I'm sure in writing there's some sort of formula for writing that is probably similar to this. I'm not inventing anything that's never been done before, but just kind of discovery by doing it and writing and creating these chapters and these comic issues. I've kind of found this is a good formula for me to follow, and I make sure to follow that in each chapter that I write, in each comic that I write, to just give it makes the story a little more interesting. So, these last 2 pages that we're working on basically are a change of scene from the previous issue. We were with the robot characters in the last page before this, and then we're going off now on the final part of the journey with the Spectre characters going off. They're in a hijacked enemy vessel. They're heading towards the enemy base to make the final confrontation. And there's a couple of little things that happen on these 2 pages, which, cause a little bit of a drama to get to the final point where they're at the destination that they're going to. And then that leads into the next part of the story. So that's where the cliffhanger or the revelation or the interest to get the reader to read the next chapter is. And as I said before, we're going to start chapter 7, issue 7, upcoming in the next month once I get this book off to the printer. As I said, the next phase of this is just doing some proofreading, some editing, making sure all the art is exactly the way I want it before I send it to the printer. And then once I get it off to the printer, we'll do a bunch of videos that kind of go through the process. I actually want to do a video on comparing the original sketches to the final pages. We'll just kind of put some up and do a side-by-side comparison so you can kind of see from what I started out from an original sketch after I did the scripting and put it in a sketch form on the page, hold it up next to the final page and just see what changed and what was different. And I'll kind of point out my thought process, and that might just help understand that the sketching that I do is different than the final page. But it's, you set it up, you set the page, you lay out the page, and then you get to the final inks. You may change some things, you may edit things, you may see things once it's on paper, then once you go to ink, you may want to change something. So we'll go through that process. We'll do a video on what I look for when I edit. So that should be interesting, because you'll find stuff, because especially for me, because this process took so long, I'll find things like some art that I'm not that I liked at the time, but maybe I want to fix it a little bit, make it a little better. So stuff like that we'll kind of do. I'll show you my markup. We'll put them on screen. We'll go through a couple of pages and show you what I look for when I'm editing and just looking to make the art a little crisper, make the art a little better, and then also some story edits and dialogue changes and stuff like that. So that will, that'll be fun to kind of go through the process of finalizing the book before we go to print. So when I originally wrote this specific storyline, I envisioned it as a 9-chapter huge graphic novel. And because I was going to Comic-Con and my book wasn't done and I needed something for my table, I decided to break each chapter up into a comic issue. So I had 4 comics done at the time. I was working on issue 5 at the time. And I basically took the first 4 chapters and I made individual issues out of those. And then I also collected those into a single volume. So I had a single volume of 4 issues, which I sold for a little cheaper price than if you had bought the 4 individual comics. But then I had, for people just interested in buying 1 or 2 issues, I had individual comics of the first 4 chapters. So that was nice. And then I'm doing the same thing. So I've got chapter 5 is completed. Chapter 6 is completed here. We just completed it. We have not gone to print yet, but that will be soon. And then we're going to have chapters 7 and 8. As I mentioned, I originally conceived this as a 9-chapter story. And then I realized, because this is taking so long, I thought, what, I could probably clean up the end of the story, make it a little more focused, take out some of the fluff, and transition it down from, instead of 9 issues, 8 issues. And then that will actually be a nice balance, because I'll have 4 issues that make up the first collection I did, and then issues 5, 6, 7, and 8 will make up the second collection, and then I'll have 2 individual graphic novels, 4 chapters each, 4 issues each collected. And then ultimately, when I get all 8 done, I'll probably do a large single. This is one large story, so I'll probably combine both into a large, huge volume. It's going to be over like 250 pages. It'll be awesome, an awesome story. And then I was thinking of throwing a bunch of like sketches and behind the scenes artwork in there, and some of the processes I do, and just a lot of extras in there. I might do a Kickstarter for that down the line, but that's a few years away, so I'm not even going to bring it up now, other than just saying that. But I do now, going into chapters 7 and 8, I do have to do a little rewriting, because I still have it kind of written as 9 chapters. So I've kind of conceived of a way to reduce some of the story and make it a little more focused. As I said, we'll get that down to 2 more chapters, but it will cause a little rewriting, and I'm going to just have to make sure everything's consistent and that nothing gets kind of cut out. That's very important to the story. So we're going to focus on that coming up. We'll also do some future videos of sketching out the next couple of the next pages. I've been doing most of the stuff on ink, but now I'm going to have to go back to pencil and paper and do, go from script to sketch. So that should be a fun process. So I wanted to talk about the actual storytelling part of the graphic novel or the comic issues, because the storytelling is just as important as the artwork. We think of art when we're talking graphic novel because there's a lot of visual stuff in there, but the storytelling is just important. The writing is just as important. And as I've been going through my process, I feel like I have improved in the storytelling. I do feel like this is one of my best written issues. And I just chalk that up to understanding the characters better, understanding what story I'm trying to tell a little better. But, writing is a process. And again, I mentioned the formula that I follow. Not only the drawing, but the writing part of it goes hand in hand with that process. And I feel a good way to keep the reader engaged is to have characters they find compelling and want to follow and want to like. So in a story like this, which is really, this story kind of covers a lot of genres. It's got a little bit of mystery to it. action adventure, a little bit of humor. So I'm kind of hitting all the things, but my story is meant to be a little lighter, a little, like I said, it's got some humor in it. It's meant to be lighter. It's cartoony. But you want the characters to be impactful. And one way to do that is to make the characters, especially in an action adventure, put the characters in danger, put some real risk into the story. Now, again, this is a cartoony book. It's got humor. It's light. There's no violence in here. Nobody's going to die. Any kind of death or destruction is usually robot, humorous, slapstick kind of violence. Nothing is dark and horrible in this story. It's just not the kind of stuff that I want to write. But I do want the reader to care about the characters. So it's important that you put them in danger. You give them a little bit of risk so that the reader can actually worry about the characters, about their well-being and what happens to them. And so as we're getting to the climax of this story, as we're leading into the chapter 7 and 8 of this story, the story's written so that there will be a little bit of danger. We're going to start the final confrontation with the antagonists of the story. We've been alluding to them this whole time, but we've never really confronted them. So now this issue actually starts the process of introducing the enemy, because they've kind of been a mystery up to this point. So that's chapter 6, this issue 6 that we just completed. Issues 7 and 8 are going to lead into a lot, again, not dark, but there'll be a little more risk involved, because now they're confronting the enemy on their ground, on their turf. So it should get interesting. We're going to be putting the characters you've been following, if you've been reading these stories, in a little bit of danger, and there's going to be stuff at stake that makes you want to care about what happens to them. And the final thing I wanted to talk about, number one, completing this issue and working on these last 2 pages that you see behind me. One thing that's going to be challenging for me is drawing the environments. For the most part, most of the story, I've had very easy environments to draw. Most of the set pieces took place on the bridge of the ship or in the ship somewhere. I've drawn those 1,000 times. They're pretty easy for me to draw. Nothing new there. But when I have to start creating new environments and specifically drawing, we're heading towards an asteroid, so we're going to have a lot of rocky terrain, a lot of exterior landscapes, and I want to make those look good. I find those challenging to draw. So I'm going to have to actually do a little bit of learning, looking at a lot of reference photos. If you've played the game Destiny, I used pictures of the moon from the game Destiny to kind of figure out how to draw a cool landscape, like a moon or asteroid type landscape, because it's very rocky and there's really cool formations. I want to make the last part of the journey is going to be a treacherous journey over that landscape, and since the characters are going to be kind of traversing it, I wanted to make it visually interesting, make it a little bit dangerous, and make it look good as I draw it, because as I've said, my art has improved greatly from issue 1 to issue 6 here. I mean, it's night and day. And that is the story of finishing issue 6 of Spectre Comics. Today is a huge day for me. I'm really excited to have this done. There's a lot of work to do before we go, as we go through the editing process, and before we go to print. We're going to do a video on how to make a cover. I'll show you my process for coming up with a cover idea, and then we'll do the drawing of the cover, so you get to see that before we go to print. I really appreciate you tuning in. If you want to see any of the other videos of the other pages I've worked on before this, those will be linked in the description below. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up button and share this video. That'd be much appreciated, and spread Spectre Comics around. And feel free to engage me in the comments section below. I'll definitely respond if you write. And again, I appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time, and have a great day.